Hey everyone, Jensen here. I'm so glad that you're here. We will be going through the UiPath REFramework. It's a very important concept, especially if you want either a job or if you want to pass the advanced certification. I'll bring in the chat to see if we have some initial question here. Other than that, I'll be sharing my screen and we'll start building. There'll be no PowerPoints here, as I believe that we learn the best if we go through the practical examples where we can learn the things on the way. So I'll explain all the key concepts. We'll be learning to error handling with try catches. We'll be learning to logging. We'll be learning all about queues, orchestrator, dispatcher, performer. We will touch all the important concepts. And most important of all, we will be building an entire use case that will take place from start to end. I try to talk as slow as possible, but I also know that I'll be moving this, but I also know that when I'm getting excited or nervous, I will talk a little bit fast. And right now I'm both. So yeah, let's get started. I prepared a simple use case where we have an Excel sheet. And the Excel sheet looked like this. It opens over here on this screen. But it's a simple use case. And before you think this is too simple, it's actually a really good use case. I'll explain why. So we want to create a UiPath robot that takes each one of these rows here, look up the country and get the capital on Google in a Google search. We will scrape the data and then we'll write it back to Excel. Of course, we could create a simple robot, a sequential robot that will do everything for us, but we will use the UiPath REFramework. It has the huge advantage that if something goes wrong, say that our flow breaks, our system goes down in the middle of everything, we can easily come back and repair it and continue where we left. It is also a great thing for logging. And if we want to scale our robots, that is built in the entire organization, this is the go-to framework. Without further ado, I will jump right to the REFramework and we will start building. So we will open up a UiPath Studio and let me see if we have something here. We have a lot of nice people that are telling where they come from. Hello everyone, I'm so glad to see you. I'll be turning a little bit around to see the chat, but let's start building. I'll open up a UiPath Studio. And I really want you to build with me. Why? Well, I think you learn the most when you start building. The UiPath REFramework can look a little bit overwhelming when we first see it. And it is. I was very scared by it at first, but I started building. I built a couple of flows and then it was just there. And so what I recommend you to do is to look closely here. Maybe you open up your own UiPath and build with me. And in case you don't get everything, that's perfectly fine. I don't expect you to learn everything today, but you can easily just come back to this video and build it one more time. When you can go through this video without thinking, what happened here? Then you're done. You understand the UiPath REFramework. There'll be some advanced concepts which we will not touch today, but we can come back to it either at my Discord. The link is here in the description. We are now 1,400 plus members, or you can take my 3-hour UiPath REFramework course at Udemy. That one is priced at around $12, while this is free. So stay here now and we'll be building together. And again, thanks for all the people attending. I'm so happy that you want to participate and please engage in the chat. I'm so happy to see that I'm not alone and it means a lot. Some of you have also asked if you can support me financially. I don't need that, but if you see something you like, either this video, you can help me a lot if you give it a thumbs up. Or if you see some of my other content on LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever, you can help me a lot if you give it a thumbs up. That was all. Let's get started. So we open up our studio. And first we will be creating a simple project where we will just look up these countries and write it back to Excel. Nothing too fancy, but we will reuse it for our REFramework. So in case you think it's irrelevant, it's not. So I created a new process. Go up here. We can call it something. Let's call it REFramework Live Demo 1. So this is our first demo for today. We will just be creating the initial steps. And what we want to do here. We want to read this very Excel sheet and then we will do the lookups. We will also be touching Orchestrator and where we use assets and queues. So stay tuned. First of all, we can just be going through these ones one for one. So we want to go to activities, and then we want to read this Excel sheet. This is, by the way, the same procedure when we will create the UiPath REFramework. But first, let's just create a simple process that actually do what we want. So we want to have a read range. Choose the one on the workbook. That one can use Excel even though you haven't got it on your computer, and we will not use the Excel activities in this case. So here we need a workbook path, and then we need a sheet name, and we need a range. First of all, the workbook path. I placed my workbook path here at my desktop. You can see it here. And it's called some numbers, that is the date, and the REFramework live. Here it is. So here I can, a good practice is to shift right click. And I'm not sure if it's too small. Should I enlarge it a bit? Let me know if you can see. I don't think I can see here, but I can enlarge it a bit over here. I hope it goes. But I shift right click here, then this copy as part emerges. It's not standard. If I just right click on it, it's not there. So shift right click, copy as path, because then we can use it over here. But what I want to do here, instead of just hard coding in, I could easily paste it in here. I will create a variable, and we will use that variable first as a static variable here in this flow, and later on we will create an asset in Orchestrator. An asset is simply just a variable stored in Orchestrator. We can store path. We usually do that. We can store credentials in a secure way, and lots of other things. So instead of having this read range, we delete it. Then we press Ctrl K and we call our variable something. I can just say str ExcelPath like this. So now we have created this variable. You can find it down here in variables. And it's a string variable. That's the benefit of always creating your variables in your activities, is that you always get the right variable type. Now we just need to give it a value. So if I go over here in default, I paste in my newly created copied path. Because I'm not sure that, I know that this first thing of the path that will change, my folder will change when I move it from computer to computer, but I will know that the last part is always static. It's always called data SLSX. I can choose to leave this out here, so I can cut this out, something I usually do, and then because I still, now it's incomplete, you can see it up here, but then I can just say plus, and I can paste it in up here, of course in quotation marks. So what I did here was just combining it up here instead of having the whole address down here. And that was because my sheet is always called data XLSX, so this one is the varying part. We want to read sheet 1. Is that true? Yeah, we will read sheet 1. That's where our input data is. And remember, our REFramework mission today is to build a REFramework that will read all these countries, do a Google search, and write the capital back. But we want to do it in REFramework. Last time, Jan and I, that's my colleague, we made a 3-hour UiPath REFramework course. People got somewhat angry because we used the Windows calculator as an example. Why we did that was, first of all, the syntax is completely the same whether we use an advanced application such as Salesforce, and each one of you will have the Windows calculator on your computer, and in this case, the browser. So don't worry, don't think this is too simple. The procedure will be entirely the same. Let me go back to the chat. Can you make your camera a bit smaller? Do you think I should? I can definitely do that. That's the benefit of these live streams, that I can make them sorted. So I'm a little bit smaller here. And that was Saxam. What about the sound? Is that about right? You think the sound level? Christian, he helped me a lot with the sound, so I hope everything is okay. Again, just use the chat, please. If things goes too fast, if the picture, like you said that the camera was a little bit smaller, then I'll definitely want to know it. But now let's move on. We have created our read range here with the path. We're reading sheet 1. Is that right? Yeah, it's called sheet 1. Now the range, and usually what I do here, because I usually read a whole sheet, I just delete everything in the range. And then we just need to output it to a variable. you will see the object repository over here, but go to properties and we can see the output field, which is a data table. Let me hide this variable. So I'll be creating a variable. Again, always create your variables if you can in the fields, in the activities. So I will just say Control K, and then I'll say DT data. This is a data table. It will look exactly like the Excel sheet. There's no difference. It will have rows and columns. Data tables are really efficient when we want to work with data, because we can easily apply a lot of functions to it. Now we have read it, and we can go through each one of these rows and we can take out the country and do a Google search. But first I can see here we have a Hahaha Land. That one we will change a bit later. I think I will move it to Denmark. This is, by the way, the list of my viewers. So most of my viewers are from India, then USA, Germany, Britain. This is the list. And I'm from Denmark. Bjørn, he says, thank you for the initiative in Danish, by the way, and a lot of people are replying here in chat. Thank you, thanks a lot. I'm sorry that I'm looking over here. I'll need another screen, but for now I think it works. I will not be taking any breaks, but I will turn around once in a while and take some questions from the chat. So by all means, use the chat, and again, the more you engage, the more happy I am. It will help my channel, so thank you. Anyways, we will iterate through this because now we have read it into a data table. And I can save the workflow if I want. So I want to iterate through each one of these rows over here. And we will do that with an activities for each data row. And for you that thinks that this is going too slow, this is not the REFramework. No, it's not. But actually we will split the REFramework in two parts. That's best practice. We can split it in a dispatcher and a performer. The dispatcher will take all our data and add them to a queue as transaction items. That is one as queue items as one item for each record. For example, here we have one record, that's one line, that's ID 1, India, that's one record. 2, USA, that's the next record. And what we want here is that we want to treat each one as separate queue items. And why do we want to do that? Well, we want to do exceptional error handling, because then we can start to say, oh, this one went wrong, the data is not correct, then we can throw an exception. Or maybe the system breaks, that happens, I heard about that. Then we can also throw an exception and come back to that very transaction in maybe the next day or in an hour when the systems are back up again. So that's why we do it. And yeah, we will start by iterating through each one of these countries. So we find a for each row in data table and drag it in. Here I'll say for each current row in DT data. Remember, we just created it up here. The current row you can choose to leave. That's fine. I always do that. But that just refer to each one of the rows. So when we later will refer to it, the current row that we're iterating through, that's called the current row. Now we can start to do something. So we have read the Excel and we're iterating through each one of these rows here. And then we can open up a browser and start to do something. So we need to think about it. We need to open a browser, and that calls for a scope that's called Use Application Browser. In case you don't see these activities, in case that you think these ones are missing, that is most likely because you haven't enabled the modern design experience. Do that, that will be standard. It's already standard, and it will be standard, more standard in the coming. To do so, we can either do it on project level. That might be clever if you sit in a company now and only do it for this project. Then you can go up here, you click project, you click the settings, and make sure the modern design experience is enabled. Or go to home, then go to settings, click design, and down here in design style, you can see use modern for new projects. That's yes, it's fine. So just to make sure that we have that. And then we will start to see, we will use a scope. That is, we will define which application that we want to work in. We want to work in a browser, a Chrome browser, but feel free to choose any other browser you want. So I find a use application browser here and drag it in. I will drag it in just above this for each row in data table, and then I will just drag this for each row into this do, because for each one of these rows that represents a Google search. So first here I will just say I will indicate the application to automate. We will automate the Google Chrome. So here I have a Google. Let me just go to google.com. That is here. We got it. Thank you. So I will do a Google search here, and I'm not really sure why these two comes up, but that's fine. So I will indicate the scope. This is my scope. You can see it turns green. That's the application. That's it. So now I define the scope. You can even see that UiPath automatically detects that we want google.com. That's fine. Now we can do our Google searches. So what I want to do, let me show you. I want to say India, and then I want to say, actually I want to say India capital, and then I want to grab this capital. I want the New Delhi out, and I want to store that for the corresponding row here in the capital. It might seem very easy. It is if you know what to do. So don't worry, we will be showing everything here. So are you building down home? Do any of you build with me, or are you just watching? Please let me know in the chat, and still let me know about the speed. Is the speed right okay in the chat, or slower or faster? Then I'll adjust. So here we will do these Google searches. It's always good practice to make sure that we are on the front page for each transaction. Then that's whatever robot you build, make sure that for each transaction, our transactions here, that are these ones here, always make sure you go to the front page, whether that is a browser or an application. We want to be sure that. Why? Well, then we can create the most stable automation. We know where we are every time. So here I will search for a go-to URL. That will just be the start of it. I'll just go to this URL here, and now we could create a variable. However, that's just hard-coded in, but it might be best practice to use a variable for this, because now we are going to reuse this, but you get the point. So we're moving to the google.com each and every time that we take these transactions. Then we can start to type something in. And so I'll find a type into, that is here, and drag it in. So just below the go-to URL, I will indicate in Chrome where I want to type something in. Click here. Now you can see it turns green. I can choose around every element on my web page. I'll just choose this input field, as this is the input field that I want to choose. Here you can see that we have the first selector that it found that is actually the best one. That is the fuzzy selector. It's have some attributes. Don't worry about that. If it works, it works. That's fine. Then I click confirm. So now we have a type into, and what you also want to do as best practice, make sure you rename your activities. It might not sound like a big thing, but if you build larger scale automation, then when your robot breaks, it's quite nice and convenient to know where it broke, because and that one, the activity name can tell you. So maybe here I'll just say type into instead of input. I'll just say maybe Google input. I could also rename some of the other activities and give them descriptions. However, I won't. Now Guru, he said he cannot see the use application scope. Sure, I just showed that, and by all means, if I'm here to repeat myself, I will show you where you can find it. Go to project, then go to settings. And up here in general, make sure you have modern design experience enabled. Then you can see the use application scope. Are you with us, Guru? I hope so. I hope that's your name. You're quite small over on that screen. Sorry. Anyways, we can now type something in. And let's just remember what we're actually typing in. We are typing in these countries here because we want to do a capital search. So what we want to do here is that we want to type something in, and we want to refer to this current row of our data table. Remember, our data table, that is a mirror of our Excel sheet. So what we can do here is that always press Control Space, the intelligence will open. We will use the current row. Since we're here, we can just press Tab. So current row, that will give us the current row. And now we want to find the country. So I'll say dot, then I'll say item. That is, item is simply just a column name. There's nothing more into it. It's just a column name. Then I'll say parentheses, and let's say see if Guru he have he might be there. So then we say item, and then we have the column name in quotation marks. So I'll say country like this. And then because it's an Excel object, I'll say dot to string, like this. So now it will type something in. And sometimes it's necessary to have the field cleared. You can see it over here that we now we clear a single line. We can choose to not clear it, or we can choose to clear multi-lines. It's not really an issue because we go to the Google comp, but it might be an issue. Another thing that we want to do is that, let me show you here, is that make sure you hover, you make the browser scope, the use Chrome, browser Chrome, you make that blue, because we don't want it to close. So choose to never close it. That is after we've run the automation. Let's just let it be open. That one will be easy for now. That's it. I can run my automation now and hopefully it will work. I just need to add a capital here, like India capital, and then I need an enter click. So if I press plus here, then I want to add a capital after the country name. So I'll say quotation marks, then I'll say a little bit space, and then I can just say capital, like this. So now I'm writing the country name and the capital. Then I want an enter click. The easiest thing to do is to actually copy this one here. So make sure you copy it or cut it. And then you click this, this one over here, this drop down, and then you choose the enter. Because what happens here is that it delete everything we just wrote. Again, choose, remember to copy it and choose the drop down and choose the enter. In case you want to go back, just press Control Z. It will come back. Control Z. So here, but we want to take the enter key, and so I want to do this. Like this, and then I can copy in what I just did here, like this. So now I'm doing 10 Google searches from my Excel sheet. What we just need to do now is to close down the Excel sheet, and we have created the first part of our automation. Again, something can go very wrong in this session. I hope I don't hope something goes wrong, and I don't want to break something by purpose. But if it does, you can debug with me. You'll learn a lot by that. That's actually one of the things where I learned the most. I debugged with some very experienced developers. For now, we can run it here. Hopefully it will work. I will run the file. I will sip a little bit of coffee. Now you can see it. What it does here, it's only giving us the capitals. It says Brazil capital. We are not doing anything with this. We just see that it actually works. Let me check the chat. Oh no, Björn says that my person covers up something here in the activities. That's right, I'm here. So I think I will move myself over here in this corner. Let me know if it's okay. I think it adds a little bit of personality when I'm here. Maybe just a little bit above here. Again, actually, I think I will move myself here. So again, I hope you will tell me whenever I'm doing something, whenever you can't see me, that will be fine. Or maybe we should just move ourselves up here, because we still have the UiPath over here. Thank you, Björn. Again, these live streams are a little bit learning by doing to me, not the exact UiPath thing, but the streaming. So please continue to give me feedback. Now we could actually do the Google searches. Fine. Then we just need to grab this data. So what I want to do here, so we're doing the Google searches, and we want to grab this Canberra for Australia or wherever we are. And to do so, we will use a get text. And so in activities, I'll find a get text. And all this is, if you're just here, this is introduction to the UiPath REFramework. This one will add data to our queue. It's a quite important concept, so make sure you stay tuned. And I can see we're now 53. That is really cool. And Julian, he says, thanks for the video, Anders, you're big. Thank you, Julian. And please just continue to be so nice in the chat. Bring up questions, and whenever you think I could be better here in the live chat. So I'll use a get text, because now it gets interesting. Make sure. So we will scrape this result here. We will scrape that back into a variable in where we can write it out to Excel. So here I have dragged in the get text. Now I can indicate what I want to drag. And so I will, you can see here I can choose a lot of elements. It's a little bit trial and error, these selectors, but I will choose the Canberra. You can see that it turns red. That says that we will need an anchor. And an anchor is just something that could identify our element here. So we want to grab the Canberra. And can you think about something that's always there when we have done our search? Well, if the country exists, then we know that this capital up here is there. We can choose that one. So make sure that it turns blue here. And in case you can't find it, you can always hover over your target and click the add anchor. So we will choose an anchor, and I will choose the capital. Now this turns green. That means that we probably, we don't know, have created a stable selector. So that's it. That's how easy it is. We will not touch the code or the UI selector. In this case, if it works, we will see. I think it does. To be honest, I just created it just to see that this whole thing works as a little bit of preparation. So then I click confirm. So now we have the text. We get the text capital. That's fine. We will save it into a variable. And I will just go down here, press Ctrl K, and then I can say str capital like this. Then I press enter. We have created the variable. You can see this error here turns away. We will not save it to Excel because we will leave that to our REFramework in a little while. What we want to do here is just to see that we can actually print each one of these capitals out. And to do so, I'll use a right line. You will rarely use the right line in robots, but you will use it a lot when you develop them. So we use them a lot for debugging and to see that we actually have the correct data stored in this variable up here. So that's why we use the right line. So now we are doing the Google search. We are getting the text and then we're printing it out. Because when we have done that, we can start creating our REFramework. So I click save, or I can just click run actually. So I click run and we will see if everything works. So far it looks okay. What we might do is that now you can see something broke here. That's fine, not broke, but we need to make the selector a little bit more stable. That's fine. We will see what we can do. We will now the timeout is 30 seconds. We will change that, or I can actually just stop the robot. But this one here, this get text, it looks after this. Yeah, that's fine. It looks after this element, and then it will, if I'm not doing anything, it will look for 30 seconds. Then just change it to 3, and then the robot will stop. But now, and actually, this one we can close. That's the old one. There was a problem with this Germany. So let's try to make a better selector to see that it actually works with this Berlin. When we're still not sure, we can indicate the target on screen, or we can edit the target. Let's just click edit the target. Now you can see here it turns green. So that was actually not what we wanted. Now let me go, let me indicate. And here we will try to make it indicated again. And then we will use the anchor. And to see if this works. That might have something to do with this CSS selector. Hopefully this will work. Otherwise we will have to debug a little bit more. Now I think the German capital at least works, but we might have. It seems like the other ones works too. The German worked. And sometimes you need to make these tweaks to the selectors. Don't overthink it. It's learning by doing again. Let's see the questions. Ryu, is it possible to record this session? Ryu, it will be available on this very YouTube address whenever we are done. So you can just come back and watch it. But hopefully you will stay, because then you can interact with the questions. Let me see if we have some other one. Sono, he really loves it. Thank you, Sono. I really love the engagement of your things. And now you can see that we actually solved it. We made stable selectors. That was what we wanted. And then we have all these things printed out. So we have all the capitals now. And this is what we want our REFramework to do. So we have actually almost created a robot that solved our problem, but we want to set it up in UiPath. And before, I said it before, don't think this is too simple. First of all, it will take you very easy through the REFramework. I will explain all the important concepts, and it's very, very easy with a nice, easy case, so we don't have to automate some weird advanced applications. And each one of you has a browser with a google.com on. That's why. Don't worry. So this is what we want to do. And now I want to touch another concept here, because we want to add these things to a queue, and just hide this. We want to add. So what the REFramework is all about is to take each one of these records. That is each one of these searches in this place. It could be, if you are typing something into a system, it could be one name that you want to one name with some data on that you want to type into a system. That will be a transaction. So always, before you start to automate, before you start to type the data in, always, not always, but 90%, 91%, create a queue if you can. If you actually have transactions, split it, so you can easily split it for whenever you want to handle exceptions. Again, let's just see what happens here. That's it. So now I will open a browser. I think I will just log over here, because I'm not sure that I actually have logged in, and then I don't want to display my, oh, I'm logged in. I just didn't want to expose my password. Here, that is the automation cloud. You will be taken to it if you write this very first here and log in with your UiPath credentials. Just type in https cloud uipath.com, and it will automatically get the rest of the rest. Take a look here. If I copy this, mark everything, paste it in, it will take me here. Or if you haven't logged in, it will make you log in. Now click your orchestrator. That is the tenant here. That is the Anders Jensen org. That's what I called mine. I'll be creating a separate folder here, because these ones, they all represent some personal stuff, which I don't want to expose in this video, and it's also nice to just have it free. So go up here to tenant. Up here in Orchestrator in the left corner, click Folders. And then under this plus here, I'll just be creating a folder. We can give it a name. I will just say REFramework Live. And the rest I will just leave as it is. So then I click Create. Because now we have a folder. I can even see it down here, Ref Live. This one is what I created. There's nothing in it. We have no processes, no assets, no queues, whatever. We will fill that in. Don't worry. First, we need to understand the queues. Because what we want here is that we want to add these Excel records to a queue. That is what we call in REFramework language, that is what we call a dispatcher. A dispatcher, all there is to that is that we want to add each items as a separate queue item. If you don't understand it, don't worry, I will show it to you in 2 minutes. You will definitely understand what a queue item is, and I'll explain the difference between a queue item and a transaction item. Let me just check the chat. We are a lot of people are asking, is it about the modern design experience? Why we're using that, that's because it's becoming standard. It's much cooler than the classic. But if your company uses the classic, by all means, just use that. All the things in the REFramework will be the same, except like the use application browser. So that's all there is to this. And then someone's asked about the selectors. Yeah, we want to just automatically create our selectors. So you're perfectly right. Generally speaking, we want to let UiPath handle as most as we can, because it's getting so good that it's even outperforming me, and by the means I'm just an average RPA developer. That is true to some extent. Let me see if we have another. I really love it. Thank you. So now we can start to create a queue. And to do so, I'll just press queues up here. We have no queue. We'll add a queue. Create new queue. We can give it a name. Let's just call it capitals and click add. It's that easy to add a queue. Now I want to create my dispatcher part of the REFramework, remember we split our REFramework in two things. We have a dispatcher and a performer. The dispatcher adds things to the queue. The performer, that is actually the REFramework. That one will take one item from the queue and make a transaction out of them. That is, for example, typing in something system one by one. So the REFramework, that is the performer part, but usually there's a dispatcher tied to it. I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, let me know in the chat. Yeah, I just want to know in the chat, can you just, if you think the pace is okay, can you type okay in the chat? And if you think you want it faster or slower, can you please do that? I hope everyone, or a lot of you will respond, because then I can adjust my talking speed. Anyways, we get started. Because we will use some of the components that we just created here, I'll create two more UiPath workflows, the dispatcher and the performer. And this one, you can use this as an example. I will be making them available down here in the chat afterward. So what I want to do, I go to the studio icon here, I'll find it again, and then I open another instance, because now we will make our dispatcher. It seems like the speed is okay. Thank you. And I also, a lot of people are writing okay, thank you. And now we will make another process. Again, we will not use a REFramework now, because the dispatcher will not be a REFramework. This will just be a sequential process where we are adding items to the queue. So now I say this process, then I can say dispatcher like this. And here. So now we have our dispatcher. And because I think that we should get introduced to some of the important concepts in Orchestrator and UiPath in general, we will use assets. An asset is just that we can store things in our Orchestrator so we can later use it. So instead of having us to write out, let me show you the automation that we just created, we use this as a variable. But why don't we store this in Orchestrator? That has the advantage that we can change it across the whole organization in a centralized place instead of opening up these processes and having to edit them there. So that is the ExcelPath. And what I want to do is simply just cheat a bit. I'll just copy this one here, copy that one. So I will be creating an asset out of this. An asset is just a placeholder for variables in Orchestrator. There's nothing more into it. So if I'm in my folder still, if you can't find your folder, you can always go to tenant, folders, and then it will definitely be here. Otherwise it will, or if you have collapsed this, simply just expand it. So now I'm here and I will create an asset. So click the asset. We will add an asset, create a new asset. This one I will call ExcelPath. It will be of the type text. Usually it will be stored as text, or we sometimes also use credentials if we want to handle credentials in a nice and secure way. But for now it's okay. Then we give it a value. And one thing that we need to remember here, and stop if you just did it, please delete the quotation marks. We will not use them. Like this. So here I have just stored the path to my Excel, to the folder of my project, of the data of the project. That's all there is to this. I can click create. So now we can use this asset from Orchestrator, we can use that in our dispatcher. That is fine, that is a very convenient way. So if you don't know to work with assets, this is a very great, simple case to make you work. One thing that we need to make is that we need to change our folder here to our newly created folder if you have created a new one. If you're using your old one, please just stick with that. Just make sure that you actually are using the folder that we're just creating. So I'll just change it down here. In case you don't see it, then you can click this drop down and click refresh. Then it will be here if you have created it. Let me check. Hey, Kipunit from Spain, nice to see you. And it's so nice that there's so many people here. I mean, if you all can do me one favor, if you enjoy this session, if you want to see more, you can really help me a lot if you give it a thumbs up. I know I said it a couple of times, but yeah, that will definitely help my channel and me a lot. Thank you. I will just take a breath, because now we will use this asset. And to use this asset from Orchestrator, all these things I'll show you today, they are very, very easy. There's no rocket science here. There's nothing that you have to be a rocket science for. It will be very, very easy afterwards. So here in activities, I want to search for get asset. And remember, we're creating the dispatcher now. You can also see it up here in the title if you get a little bit lost later, but this is a dispatcher. We'll add items to the queue. Then I'll say get asset. The asset name, this asset name, that should correspond to the name that we are actually using here in Orchestrator. That was ExcelPath. So if I copy this one here, I can either choose to create a variable for it or just hard code it in. I think I will just paste it in. And remember always when we are strings, have it in quotation marks. It's fine by now. And maybe we could give it a better name. So instead of get asset, we can say ExcelPath. That is where our Excel is stored. So we get an asset, and we get it from Orchestrator. I don't know if you can see my hand. And then we drag it down to use, so we save it in a variable. That's all there is to this. We will just save it to a variable. So if you go down here to asset value, press Ctrl K. I repeat, press Ctrl K. Then I'll say str ExcelPath. So all we do here is that we take this one here from Orchestrator. We say with this value, we save this value into a local variable that we can work with, because now we can do exactly like we did before. We will actually cheat and copy some of the components from before. Let me know if we have some. Marek, I will just, it's very, very small. I think I will just, rearrange these ones. And these are always good if you want to catch up. So let me make the chat a little bit bigger. Have you ever had a situation when UiElement gives true, but actually it's not visible? It becomes visible when it crashes finally. Yeah, I have a lot of those things happening. It's some sort of a Sudoku often with selectors. And I'm actually preparing a course with my colleague Jan. We will make it on either YouTube or Udemy, and I will make a video about it here on YouTube as well. So we will not touch selector so much today. We will touch REFramework a lot because that's the key here. But definitely it's always a puzzle. But I think UiPath has gotten a lot better. It's very, very easy now in modern. After 2021-10, I think it works like a dream, to be honest. Then Roberto, he says, good morning from Madison. Hey, Roberto, nice to have it here. And if I forgot one of you here in the chat, I'm very, very sorry. It wasn't meant to, but it's quite, I will definitely get another screen. But please let the questions and comments coming. Just if you want to say hi and where you're from or what you're doing, or maybe you have some general feedback or comments for me, it's very appreciated. Anyways, let's get started with this dispatcher. I just need to have the mouse over here. As I said, we will copy from what we just did. There's no reason to manually do the same thing twice. So this one here is my dispatcher, and this one was the one we created before. Because what we want to copy, we can just, we want to copy for each. We want to have this read range, and then we want to take each row. And then we will not do these things here, but we will add them to the queue. But we will copy this read range here. So I'll Control C, go over here and paste it in. Again, it might seem a little bit overkill, but that is actually fine. And here we haven't created the DT data. That is right. So I'll just press Control K, DT data, and create it. So now we are reading the range. And we are using the orchestrator asset instead of a local variable. We are using the ExcelPath orchestrator, save it to a local variable, and use it down here. So what we want to do, exactly like we did before, we are iterating through this Excel sheet, so we find a for each row in data table. There you go. So for each row in DT data, like this. And then we just want to add it to our queue. Remember, let me go back to Orchestrator. If we go to our folder, wherever we are, we have the queue. We created a queue called capitals. Let me just copy that name and go down here, because now we will add a queue item. To do so, search for add queue item. You can also add the bulk add queue items, but I prefer to add the queue items still. Then I can choose which items that I want to add from, in this case, my spreadsheet. Here we need to put in some constants or variables. We have the queue name here. So we want to give it a queue name, and we actually just got it up here in capitals. So what I do here, let me mark it. I go over to queue name, then I press Control K. So Control K, STR, and then I can say queue name. Again, I always have difficult to spell queue, even though it's just on the left. Have you the same problem? Anyways, we have now created the queue, and then we can use it here in variables, but feel free to hard code it in over here. That's also perfectly fine. Now I'll just create this variable. I will create the value to it. That is capitals. So we're adding the queue items to a queue called capitals. That is this one. Now we just need to choose which information that we want to add, because what we want to add here. I want to add the ID and the country. That is the thing that our robot will need. We need to have a unique ID. I'll show you later on why, and then we'll have the country. We can also just have the country, because I believe each country name are unique, but if in case they aren't, we need some sort of a unique ID. But that's fine, we'll add the ID and the country. And to do so, go over here in item information, in this collection here, click the 3 dots over here, and we can start by adding in what we want from our data set. So if I click create argument, here I'm just saying which things do I want to add to my queue. So I'll say ID. I repeat some of the things because these things are very important, and let me know if it goes too slow. You can drag and drop the asset from object repository. I think Windows 10. Sure, this one we will not use the object repository. Object repository is very, very strong. I created a video about that actually. You can search for it. But for this case, we will not touch the object repository. What object repository is, just let me quickly state it to all of you, is that we can reuse components. It's very, very clever, and you can actually have some advanced developers creating things, and then you can have the less advanced developers using these objects across the organization. So very fine. We have the idea, and the direction is in, that is default, that is a string, and then we will refer to, because we are iterating through a data table. Remember, we had the queue item in for each row. So what I do here, just like before, I'll just say currentRow, like this, dot, an item, parentheses, and quotation marks, and then ID. Because again, it's an Excel sheet, an Excel object, I'll say dot to string. So this one will add the ID to the queue item. Remember, now we're making a queue item out of each row in this data table. So I'll take the currentRow, and then we will add it to this queue item. We also want the country, and you can just copy it from up here because it's the same expression. Do this. I'll just let it be in 2 seconds, so if someone you are not fast typers. Raju, he says that, hey Amit, nice to see you. Raju, he says, can we create performer and dispatcher in REFramework instead of separately? Sure, you can do that. Then you will have your dispatcher in your initialization. But and then just make sure you only run it once, because think about it, if your robot breaks, then you don't want the dispatcher to run again. So it's best practice to separate them, unless you have very nice separation in your initialization. But I will not recommend it. You will F it up. I talk from experience. However, now we have added to the queue, and we have actually created a dispatcher. That's all there is to a dispatcher. It's just that, and we could even not have this get asset. We could just we're just adding items to the queue. So shouldn't we try it? I'm not guaranteeing that no errors will show up, but we will handle them accordingly. So I can just click debug or run. We're trying to. There we go. And then if you go back to your orchestrator, now let's inspect it. Because sometimes if I just refresh my browser, nothing will happen. Click the 3 dots here, again, your queue, 3 dots, view transactions. There you go. We have now 10 items and I can inspect them. So if I click here, I can view the details. We can see we have an ID and a country. What you want to do here in Orchestrator, let's say that you have 1,000 queue items, and in your organization you want to monitor this. Usually you want to monitor the items that can't run, maybe some business exceptions, which is just error in the data, or you want to have some system exceptions. But so you want to monitor that, and it's quite hard just to see here new. So what you can do is that we can add a reference. So this is not a part of it specifically, but we can add a reference over here. That one we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it's the same thing as this one up here. So and again, we can do it. So if we just do this one here. Like there, and then I refresh it over here in our browser. We have now added a reference to our queue items. That is handy, so I'll recommend you to always do that. So it's not just called status new and there's no reference. But remember, now we have 20 items now. It's okay because we want to build our REFramework, and that is perfectly fine that we have some data to work on. Let me show you the second page. That is the one where the reference is missing. We can treat each item. It doesn't matter if some of them have reference or not. That's fine. So now we created our dispatcher. Everything is fine. We will leave the dispatcher for now. We're done. Woohoo! We will take 2 minutes with questions and comments from the chat, and then we will be building our UiPath REFramework performer. Hi Nikolai, sorry I forgot to call you today. I was busy setting this up. I will call you later. Nikolai is one of my close friends from Denmark. Then Shubham, he says hello from India. Jan, hello from Netherlands. And that I think is okay. I think I will just create a poll here, and then I will move on. So I will be creating a poll where I will ask you if you completely understand what I'm saying, or if someone goes over your head. And if so, just come back and rebuild it, because in that way I can guarantee you will learn the REFramework. So, do you understand everything I explain? Question mark. And then I'll just say yes and no. It's okay to say almost everything, and then we'll say no. It's okay to say no. You shouldn't be embarrassed about that. I think I actually, when I started, I had difficulties with this. I had to build it, like from some of these videos, I had to build it like a couple of times. Then it was very, very easy. So rewind this video and do the things. And I've made the vote, and I'll just let it be. I have a little bit of script here, so that one I make sure that we're going through each one of these things, because now we will move on. So if I'm minimizing the orchestrator, I'm minimizing the dispatcher, and I'm minimizing this. We will use some of the components here where we're typing in, because we will we will have that in the REFramework. So the easiest thing is just to create another studio. So I right click, UiPath Studio, and now to have a UiPath to have a REFramework, let me close it here. You'll find it down here. So create a REFramework. Go down here, Robotic Enterprise REFramework. That is REFramework, RE-framework. And we can call this something. I'll say ref live, and then I'll click create. Again, don't touch the VB.NET or C#. And then Shaksham, he asked, can you make the dispatcher in REFramework? Sure, we can, but I actually addressed this a little bit before. It's not recommended because you want only the dispatcher to run once. Imagine you have your robot that comes back and run the exceptions. Then you have a risk of running your dispatcher more than once. So make sure if you do it, if you incorporate it, make sure you separate the dispatcher from the actual REFramework. So place it in initialization and only have it when it runs first. But I don't recommend it. Always go with a separate solution. So far it looks fine, but if I open main workflow, this is the REFramework. Let me make sure that I have my picture here. So this is the REFramework. Don't lose breath, it's very, very easy. What we will do today is that I will have this example that we have been working on, and I will make sure that we only touch the settings that are important. There are a lot of settings and things that you can customize in REFramework where we don't need it now. You can easily just come back, because we will touch all the concepts that you need to start a REFramework and to understand it. Generally speaking, this is a state machine layout. It's your process will start up here and start. Then it goes to initialization. The idea is that you want to kill all your systems, and you do that to make sure that you start from afresh, so to say. So you kill your systems. Then you get the data up from Orchestrator or your config file. We will get back to that in a little while. And so you get the data, and now you can start to open up your systems. For example, in this case, our system is a browser, so we will take down the Google Chrome. When we have initialized everything, that is, we have killed the old ones, we have gotten our data, our configs, and we have opened up our applications, we can go on. So we have finished the initialization step. And just to show you, there's a lot of things in here. Don't worry, it looks quite confusing. It's not, and you definitely don't have to understand this today. That one will be for the next lecture, and you can easily build REFramework without understanding it. Anyways, so when the REFramework had run and you have passed the initialization phase, we can either go here, it can either go wrong. Let's say that we can't open up our systems. We will have a system exception over here, and we can actually define how many times we want to try, but let's say that after the defined number we cannot do it. We will end over here. In the end process, the robot will stop. That's it. There's nothing more to the robot. But hopefully we will not build a robot that breaks today. Because if everything goes right, and it will today, trust me, then we can go down here and get transaction data. And I have a good news for you. We don't have to open this today. This one is automatically created from the UiPath side. So only if you need to customize something, which you 99% don't want, leave the get transaction data there. It will automatically take all transaction data from the queue item and have it to work with us. What this says here, now we are transitioning further down. It can either say, do we have data on our queue? Imagine that our queue could be empty, then there will be no data. We will go over here in process. But if there's exactly one or more queue items, no, not exactly one, so more than 0 queue items, that is one or more, then we want to process. Then we will say we have a new transaction, and we go down here to process transaction. So what the process transaction is that we just here we process each one of these queue items. Remember, here it was countries, so each process transaction, that is one queue item. That was one line from the Excel sheet right from the beginning. It could also be that we're doing some big data migration into a big system. Then each one of those will be a transaction. So there are queue items when we're adding them. They're called queue items. There are queue items when we have them on the queue. But so now we are transacting them. So we are calling them transaction items. We'll refer to them in a little while. So 3 things can happen while we try to process our data. We can have a success, a business exception, or a system exception. Everything is fine by us. We just need to counter that. A success, that is, everything goes right. We can, in our case, we can do the Google search and we can scrape the data and everything is fine. It's a success. We are following this path here. I can even make it blue. We're going up here. Because after we have processed 1 item, we will get another item. We will continue that until there's no data. But we can have 2 types of exceptions. We can have a business exception and a system exception. And there's a difference, and now you need to listen closely if you don't know, because this is important. A system exception, that is if we, for example, in our case, couldn't find our browser. Let's say that our browser were gone, Then we would try to process the transaction item, and we couldn't because the browser was not there, or a system that was not there, or a field was missing. Let's say that Google, for some reason today, have removed the search field, then we couldn't process it. It would be a system exception. Then we follow this blue path up here to the initialization, and we try to open up the systems again, or we try to kill them and then we open it. But it will not happen today, but it's just so you know that this nice feature is there. And imagine it's actually quite nice, because then we will not start just to try to process like 1,000 items. We will stop and try to initialize again. The last thing, that is a business exception. It happens a lot. That is when we have data that is not valid, for example. It could be, I wrote Hahaha Land, we will see that later. That is not a country, so probably we can't find a capital related to that. It could be when we are typing in a number in the system, and that number should be a string, or it is a string and we need a number, and these things. So invalid data or missing data could it also be. So that are the 3 different outcomes of a process transaction. And then we can dig deeper down to it. But first, let me get some coffee and let me know what you're drinking. Can you let me know that in the chat? I'm drinking coffee. I think I will just type it in and let me know in the chat what you are drinking. I think it's also nice to have a little bit of breaks here in these live streams, both for me and for you. Let us go back to the poll. Most of you understand everything. 3% will have no clue. I could have done better. But then the rest of you understand all of it or most of it. That's fine. And again, just go back or ask me questions here in the chat. Or you can find my Discord. We are 1,400 developers plus at my Discord. The link is in the description below. The benefit there is that I can answer questions to a lot of people, and we have a lot of skilled RPA developers. Some are even better than me. So we not take turns, but we interact. And if you want to improve your career, we are also doing career chats and all that. You are 100% anonymous if you chose that. I'm not, but then just come there and engage. We have all RPA tools almost there, and we also have some off-topic channels as well. So I hope to see you there. Now let's take on the next step in the REFramework. Water, coffee, tea, green tea. I think I need to stop drinking all this coffee. Thank you. So what I want to do now, we will take each state one by one, the one that we are using. As I said, we will not touch the get transaction data. You don't need to. And this lecture today has the advantage that when you are done today, you can create your own REFramework by just doing that. And you can just, if you need some advanced setting, just go Google it, ask some clever person, or post it in the UiPath forum or my Discord or whatever you want. So that has to fine. So one thing that we will, not the most important, but an important concept, go down to project here. Then in this folder structure here, expand the data, and then you'll see a config. Here we will store essential data of our REFramework. So double click the config. And this one is actually stored in your project folder, so you can go find it if you want. It is in this structure, so it is in our REFramework Live, I call it, data, and then the config. You need to change one thing and one thing only to make this work. Then we can actually run the REFramework. That is the OrchestratorQueueName. And here you will have the value, because remember, we gave our queue a name. In case you don't find it, we can find it here. We call ours capitals. Or I call mine capitals. Whatever you call yours, make sure you copy that one. And then go back to your config sheet and the OrchestratorQueueName, delete that and paste in your capitals. Now your REFramework is ready to go. That was only one setting. Your REFramework is perfectly ready to go. We can try it. It will not do anything, but yeah, it can actually run now. So we can try run it. We haven't touched it other than stating the queue. You can see that, oh, actually our process is running. Can you see it? We added 20 items to our queue. I forgot that, but we did. And now the REFramework, it's processing them. nothing happens because we haven't defined anything. So what we did here was we had a reframework of 20 items. We processed them without exceptions. No, so that was fine. We will expand the process and we will make sure it will work. But let's just run the dispatcher again to make sure that we actually get these items on our queue again. That's it. So we start with the initialization phase. So open that one here. Yep, there you go. So double click it to open it. All these things, these ones are things that they're trying to initialize settings and all other things. The screen resolution, which takes my screen resolution. Don't bother understanding those. We will not use them because they are default settings, which will get your reframework to work. We can customize them in a later advanced session, or you can take my 3-hour course if you want to understand all these things, or you can sort it out yourself. So what we want to do, remember I said that we wanted to kill all processes. We want to kill all systems when we started it. So in the initialization, again, I came to this by double clicking the initialization and scrolling a little bit down. Here I have an invoked workflow. That is the first thing that we want to touch. You can also find it if you can find it out here in your project overview. Here kill all processes. This one is just invoked like this, dragged in. But let's change it here. That's fine. So we will open up the workflow. And what we want to do here is to kill our Chrome, so we know that we start up on a fresh. Could you prepare, and let me just take the questions. SVTD, could you prepare some error handling? We will have error handling. We will have a we will use the try catch, and we will create errors in this workflow. So we will have error handling and logging as well. When Sagar, he says, when an error occurs, do you terminate the workflow using throw after sending the email? I'm not sure that what's actually the question here. It seems quite specific. When an error occurs, we can have two types of exception. An unexpected thing that is a system error, then I will retry to open my systems. If I cannot do that, that was what I showed in the state machine layout, I will terminate my workflow. If it's just some invalid data, I'll just take the next transaction and make a business rule exception to the orchestrator queue, or wherever I store my log in the CSV or something. Now we want to kill processes. So I want to kill the Chrome, and I go to activities, and then I find a kill. This one, the kill process, will try to kill everything. We need a process name, and the easiest thing to do is to press Control-Alt-Delete. Control-Alt-Delete, that will give you Task Manager. I'm not sure what's happening to my stream if I press Control-Alt-Delete here, but what you want to do is to find the Chrome, find one of the Chrome windows, right-click and see the name. Or you can, if you know it, you will type it in here. It says Chrome. This one will close down our Chrome. So all there is to the kill process, that is the Chrome. So here we just killed it. Let us save it. And now we can scroll. That was the only system that we needed to kill. And now we can initialize our systems, that is the Chrome browser. So after we killed it, we make sure that we start afresh. Again, this one has an invoked workflow called InitAllApplications. I can open this one here, and it's empty again. It has a log message, but that's fine. We will drag in our activities further down below. So here I will use, again, the use application browser. Again, we're working on the reframework. We have created the dispatcher. Now we are creating the reframework. So here I'll need to indicate an application to automate. And let's make sure that we are at the front page of the Google. So I'll just do this. So I'm at the start page of the Google, because then I can click the indicate application to automate. And here you can see that it turns green. Make sure you choose the Google Chrome. and have that click. That's it. We use the browser Google Chrome. One thing that I will make sure, because imagine that you are having a workflow where you have multiple browser windows. For example, if you need to do one system in one browser window and one system in another, like you read something from one of them and typing in the other one in the process, then we will need to make sure that we're actually staying in the same. It's not a problem here, but let's just see what we can do, and let's try to understand arguments, because we have variables. Variables are containers for values. As you know, they can be strings, booleans, integers, and the likes. But we also have arguments. Arguments store the same type of things as variables, but they can transfer these variables in and out invoked workflows. So for example, let me just save it here so I'm sure we have it. So if I'm here, I can use an argument to have a variable from outside here going inside this, or even back again, or only one direction. And that's what we use arguments for. And we will use it here because we are in an invoked workflow called InitAllApplications. And if I open it again, it will open up here. So I'll be creating a variable that stores this browser instance. And what I will do up here is that up here in the output element, I can press Control K, and then I can say something. I can call it something. This one will be an outgoing argument, but it will be a UI element, and then I can say Chrome browser. Naming conventions, a lot of you have asked about that. I use not the UiPath standard. UiPath started with my naming convention here, not mine, but this naming convention. I'm not sure what it actually named, maybe camel case. They're using the camel case now, and I use this one here. My notation is just that we have a little bit of description of the variable type first, and then we have a name. UiPath will probably have the Chrome browser. But now, let me go, still with this enabled, go down to variables, use Chrome browser, because now it's a variable. To convert a variable into an argument, I just right click, convert to argument. Now it's here in arguments. And we need to think about what direction this one will go in. Can you think about that? And let me know in the chat. I will take one sip of coffee and then I will continue. And by the way, we are 63 now, and 1,271 has seen this stream. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm really, really, really... and it got 70 likes this session. Thank you. And those likes means a lot. That will get my channel further out, and it will make... This one has actually become a job for me now, so it will make it possible to make a living out of it. Anyway, we have this argument. We can see that it's a UI element. That's fine. That is the browser window, and we want it to go out because we use it in initialization, where we init all applications. Then we want to pass it out to the process where we can use it. So the direction will be out. If you don't understand it, ask me. I'll be fine to. Explain it to you. And if we wanted to use the UiPath naming convention, they name their arguments in / and then a name. So then we could rename it where we said out Chrome browser. Again, naming conventions, a bit boring. You can see it changed up here. So now we transfer this this argument out. One thing that we, again, as before, we need to make sure is that I don't want to close my browsers after I'm done. I can do it, but we can also choose to open it. Let's say that we always want to open up a new browser because we don't want to reuse someone else, so we will always open it. We will choose anyway, we can choose to always close it after us or never. Let's just choose always because we will not use it after our process is done. So that's it. That's the applications that we have initialized. So I click save. We're done here. Now we killed our systems. We open up new systems, and we are about to get ready to go to the next state. I hope that you're with me. One thing that we will need to do here is that when I go to main again, if I go into initialization, scroll down to what we just created. We created this argument. We need to map it. A map it will just mean that we have the argument from that we just created. We want to create a variable in our big scope, the business process scope, and then we can map these two and save it into that variable. Let me show you, or map it into that variable. So if I go down to variables, make sure you are in the main, either here or here. Then click the variables. Here are the variables that are defined in the general business scope. So I go down here to create a variable, because now we will just create a UI element in which we can map the one that we just created. So if I say UI element Chrome browser, remember to change the type here. So if I go to type, and that was a data table, it was not, it was a UI element. That's it. And then we can map it. So if I just click save, I'm always saving one time too many. But if I go back again, I can now click this. You can see whenever it turns orange, action is needed. So I can click the import arguments. And here you can see our outgoing argument that we created in here. We can just go over here to the value, press Control space, and then find what we just created, hopefully. UI Chrome browser here. So now we have mapped it, it turns blue. That's fine. And let's just double check that we actually, go down to the variables again and find it. Make sure that the scope is the general business process, because then we can use it in the process transaction as well. Now let's go to the main. Let's just recap what we did here. We have created the dispatcher. We have added to the queue. We have initialized our systems. We have killed the old system and we have started up the new ones. Now we can start to process them. Remember, we need to do Google searches and we need to save the results back. Mihai, he says, does modern activities, are they better than classic? For sure they are. Please use them. They are awesome. It has definitely gotten a lot better. There's one exception, that is if your company, if you use the classic, don't change that, because then you might have your architect after you. Anyways, we are ready to create our process. So if I go down here to process, and again, you will have a lot of invoked activities. You will even have some try catch. I will come back to error handling and try catch and what that means. But if I'm in here, the one thing that I want to touch is the Invoke Process workflow. That is where I put my process. You don't have to understand all the other things. This is just that we set a transaction status, we do some logging and stuff like that. Don't try to understand it. What you want to know now is the Invoke Process workflow. Don't try to gap over everything. Just take these essential things that will boost your REFramework. You will probably know like 80 or 85% of the REFramework. The rest you can sort in a weekend or something, but these ones are the important steps. So open the workflow in here. Nothing is in it. We will just start our process. Now we will attach to the browser that we opened initialization, and then we can do the Google searches. So again, use application browser, drag it in. We can indicate it, but remember we just created this UI element that we will use here. So we will, instead of indicating it, we will go over here to input. What this does is that we can use a UI element already defined. So and then I will just call it something, because this is an ingoing argument. This goes into our process. I will just again I will call it something. I'll press Ctrl K, remember that, and then I'll say in, and I can call it Chrome browser. And press enter, because what this does is, let me save it again. Let me go down to variables, and this was a variable, but we wanted it to be an argument. So right click, convert to argument. You cannot do that from up here, or not that I know. But now you can see that this indicate in application disappeared. We have now, we are not selector dependent, we are we are variable dependent. That means that we will take the variable that we just had and use that. Because these ones can change the process, it can change it, we can choose the direction, but it just comes in. But in case that we want to alter something from transaction to transaction, we can say in out. That one will also work, but we will just say in from first, and then we just need one thing. We need to map it. Let me save it. I go back here because now it turns orange. So click the import arguments. We have the argument that we just created inside the process workflow. I know this goes too fast. Rewind it or ask in the chat. And so what I will do here is that I will find it here. That was the UiElement, and I will use it here. Michaela B, she asked, do you use UiElement variable as selector? This type is new for me. No, you don't have to use it, but I will. What I explained in the beginning was that imagine that I have a lot of similar or different browser windows. I'll make damn sure that I'm working within the right UiElements, that is the browsers. So it's just for being totally sure that we can identify the right browser window or application. You don't need it. Your intuition is perfectly fine. I hope that addresses it. But now we have the browser, and let me go inside it again. So now we can start to add activities to it. And we will reuse the things that we created in the beginning. So if I go over to our ref live demo, that was the first one where we had the for each row. We will not have it for each row this time, because we have, actually what we did here was that we took each transaction item one by one, and so we will not need it. But we will still have these things here. We will go to a URL, we will type it in, and we will get the text, and we will write it out. So press one of these activities, press Control in, like this, copy it, go over to your REFramework, make sure you're in the do, and paste it in. Some of the variables will miss. I hope that yeah, it appears that I see there's a lot of questions. I think I hope I addressed every question. Otherwise, just ask again or write me after the session. I'm so sorry that if I missed something or I couldn't answer each of everyone. So what we want to do now, we are in here. We are going to the URL. We did that because we wanted to start on a fresh, so we make sure that we are always on the front page of Google. Then we have this type into. And because we are not iterating through an Excel sheet anymore, but we're taking the transaction item. So let's go over here in text and change what we are going to type in, because we cannot use this anymore. I click the 3 dots here, because now we're taking it from the queue. We will still use the capital and the enter, but we can delete this. What we want to do is the transaction item, and UiPath automatically gave us the transaction item as an incoming argument. So if I press Control space, it will say in transaction item, like this. Then I can say dot. Again, this is important. This is, if you don't know this, this is something you want to remember. So write that down or take a note. Then I'll say specific content. Now I can get things out of that transaction item. And remember, my transaction item, it looks, let me find the queue. My transaction item, that is each one of these transactions with an ID and a country in it. So specific content, parentheses, quotation marks, country, quotation mark, and then I will have a dot to string. So this one will get me the country out. Remember, we had the CurrentRow before item. Now we will just have in transaction item, specific content, country to string. It's really, really nice that UiPath created these things for us. We don't have to do it ourselves. So then I click OK. Now here we have something that we need to address to. This variable doesn't exist for sure. We haven't created it. So either here or over here, press Control K, press enter, and it's created, or it should be. Here it is. So now what we have done here, let me recap. We have opened our systems. We saved our system into a UiElement. We used it here in the process to make sure we attach to the right browser. We moved to a front page. We created that in the beginning. Then we type something in. We get the text back and we write it out to a right line. Shouldn't we see if we actually, if something goes wrong? We haven't debugged it along the way. I might have done that in a real life scenario just to make sure that everything worked, but let's see it. So now I run, it killed all the processes, and now my browser over here disappeared, so my chat disappeared. I need to log in, but make sure you are in the main and then run it just to make totally sure. And now here we could not determine the browser tab that we have opened, and that is one thing. Let me show you what we can do here. And it's not something because of this UI element, it's because of the things that we do when we open the browser. So let me make sure that everything is open. I go to the initialization. I go to InitAllApplication, and don't worry, these things here. So here we are saying that let's just keep it always open. So do we want to close it? No, we will keep it open. Do we want to open it? Always. That is fine. So here it's fine. And then in the process, make sure that you also mark this one here. And here we just keep it open again. And oh, sorry. Here. And yeah, this one was and now in the live demo everything goes wrong, but we will make sure that it works. I will open up the Google tab again. Sorry about this. This happens sometimes in a live build, and it's happened to me. I even wrote about it today on LinkedIn, but I will go into the stream again and find you guys. We can run the process again. Make sure I don't touch anything. Now we probably did something wrong in the UI element. So what we want to do here is that I want to find you guys. It closes. If some of you can just see, this is always a bit terrifying when, but it appears that we are closing the browser here. Oh, here we have always closed. We will never close it. There you go. And make sure that I did it over here. We will not be closing it. I'll try again, and I hope you're there. I don't have the chat anymore, but let's see what's going on now. Now we are actually starting a process. It's over here. It is working. I promise you, and you can see it in the output here. I will not touch it, but I will get back to you in the chat. But these are the things that happens. I actually think, I'm happy that these things actually happens here in these, because it's not all butterflies and unicorns. Sometimes you need to fix these, and I make these mistakes as well, so I'm not perfect in any way. Just that you know you can debug it, that will help you a lot. But I panicked, I sweated a bit. And I will drag this one in here. You can see that. Oh, maybe I will just go into the live stream again here. And I hope you're still here, but yeah. There you go. There's the chat. Yeah, open the chat in Microsoft Edge. It will not kill yet. You're right. I will do that. So what we did now was we actually saw that it worked. Now we need to do error handling. So whenever a country doesn't exist, and what we also do, we want to do logging. And then I think we covered all the important topics. And but let me just open up Studio over here. I don't have it open in Edge. I think I will. Yeah. I hope everything is okay. I will just be running it once. I will be creating the entire thing. We can see that it works actually, because if I go down to output, we can see that we get the transactions out here, and that is fine. Also remember that here we started to process some. When things went wrong, we tried to process something, and this one will actually start with London, but our first item was something else. So if you build your robot, make sure that it actually take all the items afterward. But let us move on to writing the results back to Excel. Because what I want to do now is that these ones are just queue items. They are queue items at the orchestrator. Oh, let me have it over here. Orchestrator. And let us just, while we are fixing this, sorry again, let's make sure that we are not closing down anything. So we will not have this one here. We are not closing this one here, and make sure that we are not closing anything here. We weren't. It's just yeah, that's fine. So so let's create the Excel part, because what we want to do now is that we will have the queue items, but that doesn't write it back to Excel. We need to read the Excel sheet once more here in the REFramework so we can write the results back. That's why we have the idea. So if I go to Init, up here, I will, just before the Init applications, I will drag in a sequence that will read my Excel data so I can work with it in the entire workflow. So here, let's drag in a sequence first and call it read data. I hope everyone is here. This one was a little bit of, yeah, I can see I lost 10 viewers. Terribly sorry about that. Anyways, read data, because now we will do a lookup and we will read the data, and then we will do a lookup and write our results back. So here I will have a read range again. I'll read the Excel sheet. Read range here. And because we can use the data path again, we used it here in our dispatcher, so we can actually just reuse this one here. We can use this get asset, and then we can have the read range afterwards. So let us either copy it or just do it ourselves. So in here, we will have an asset, and we will not use the get asset because we will use the config file. And let me show you, that is one key concept as well. So I'll open the config file. Remember, we added the queue name, then we will have the assets. The asset sheet, that one can get assets from Orchestrator. It will refer to the name that we gave it in Orchestrator, and then we can, in the name, we will get it back, the name that we are going to use in the REFramework. Yeah, some of the viewers, you are coming back. Thank you. This one was, of course, a little bit. But now I will log back into Orchestrator over here. And let me drag this one in. Because we will refer to our asset. And this has the advantage that we are not using the get asset. So whenever we want to update an asset, I just copy this ExcelPath in here. So I'll have the asset here. And then we can call it something for our... can call it strExcelPath. So this one, it looks up the Orchestrator asset, and then it will save it, this one here, in our config. And our config, that is a dictionary. A dictionary is, imagine that you look something up in a real dictionary. It will have a key that could be, for example, Denmark, and then in the dictionary that will say something about the Denmark. That will be the value, so a key value. A dictionary are always the same variable, not the same variable types, but the same variable types throughout the dictionary. For example, a string lookup, that will give us a string. You can also look up an integer that will give a string, or you can look up a data table that will give some, or an integer that looks up a data table, and that like. So now we have updated here, we can use this asset in the REFramework. When we have created it in the config file, and we have also made sure that we created it in the Orchestrator, we can now use it. We can refer to it, and let me show you. So if I go back here, so instead of, so we had the asset, and instead of this strExcel file that we had before, we can use the config. So if I just use the config, and then to get it out, you can even see that the intelligence works now. That will be a dictionary of a string and an object. So I will refer to whatever we call it in our config file. That was strExcelPath, I hope. And then since it's an object, we will write it back to a string. So this one will just read our Excel sheet into a data table. Sorry, the sheet one was fine, but this one we will close. Again, we will save it to a data table here in the REFramework. So I'll press Ctrl-K, dt data. Now we make sure, because we will use this for whenever we make one process, we will write it back to Excel. So we want to make sure that that the scope is right. So having this marked, go down to variables, because it will only be in the read data. That will be this little sequence. We will use it throughout the entire scope. So take just the general business process. Again, if you want all these things explained out, I have created a 3-hour REFramework course, which is a bit more extensive than this. Everything is explained. Just write me. Let us check if we have any. Let me just see if I can open it over here. It was here. I hope that you're still here, even though we are having some technical difficulties. I see that we are still 50 viewers, or have we dropped? Anyways, let's move on. We cannot waste any time. So we are using this this asset here from the config, and then we can use it for the path. But remember, the path that was only some of it. Like in the dispatcher, it was the same. Let me show you. It was only here we need the slash and the data. So let's create that. So then we'll say plus quotation marks slash like this. So now we read the range into a data table, and your guys are back again. The chat is a little bit silent. Sorry. I hope that everything is fine, because now we will save our results to this this data table. So if I go to my process, instead of we are getting the text right, that was also fine. It printed out everything to output, but instead of having the right line, we will save it back to Excel. But we need to know where to save it, because we are just reading the Excel sheet. We need to do a lookup. So we will look up this country and make sure that we're actually saving it to the right row. So if I find a lookup data table here, I can drag it in just beneath here, just the lookup data table, because we will save this strCapital into the row with the Q and country. And let's see what we should fix up here. We will have the DT data, and now you can find it, because if I do this, it's not there. And that is because we need to create an argument. This process is again an invoked process. So what we do here is that we say Control K. I can say this one here, and this one should be an in-out argument, because we are saving to this data table every time we process this transaction. So I can just say in-out, and then I can say DT data, like this. Then I go down to variables. I've just created a variable up here by pressing Control K, and it will be a variable. But if I right click and convert it to an argument, now it's over here. And since it's coming both direction, it will have the direction in and out. We are saving one cell each one of these iterations. It's fine. So the lookup value, well, the lookup value, we will just look up the country. That one was from up here. So let me just copy this one here. We will look up the country. Here, we are looking that up. Then we need to say, where do we want to look up the country? Well, oh, sorry. We want to look up in the Excel sheet that we have read. We want to look. Sorry, we want to look up in the country column. So to do so, column. We use the column name. You can also use the index. It was index 1, or we can just in quotation marks we can say country. What we just now need to do is that we need to just have the row index, because then we can assign the data to that. So here I can press Control K, and I'll say int index. And you're focusing. Thank you, people. Mira, she or he, I think it's she. She asked, how can you determine when you should use REFramework? Usually, we want to use REFramework when we have processes like Saxam said, that iterative processes. When we have transactions that we want to process one by one. So that's when we want to use REFramework. But now we have done the lookup, we get an integer out. So we know where we need to write it. Then we just need to have an assign. Here. So after the lookup, we can assign the value, the strCapital, to this row that we got here. So if I press Control space, I'll write to IO DT data. That's fine. Then I'll say rows like this, parentheses, and now we will use the index that we just found. So Control space, I'll say int index like this, and then I will scroll a little bit out. I will say item again, column, and then I want to write. I named the next column. I named that capital. So capital like this. Now we just need to. So now we have determined where we want to write it. I just need to tell you to tell what value it should be. It should be strCapital like this. So now we have created the process. We have not handled errors yet, but we're able to write back to Excel whenever whatever capital we have. We have no errors in this workflow. We will create an error in a little while. You'll see try-catch and exception handling. Let me just get a little bit of water while I run this flow, and hopefully it will work. And let me just make sure that we. And again, these things, we're not closing down, we're closing down these browsers, but maybe I should actually have thought about that. We don't want to close down the stream. So I think I will I hope it's okay that we don't kill the Chrome. So I hope it's okay that I leave this kill out, or I can just disable it, because so this one will be commented out now. Then we will not close everything. Let's see if it works, or if we need to do something. I'll run it. It runs over here, and it's always exciting to see what's going on. I don't think it's hold on. It just opened up a browser. What happened? We need to add items to the queue. That could be our first thing, and then we can run it. So we know that. Sorry, the REFramework live. Minimize this, and let's run it again. Now I cannot drag it in because I'm terrified in doing it, and then we have our first error. So what can be wrong here? That will be the lookup data table. I think what went wrong here, I know, we haven't mapped this IO DT data. Again, just go in here. You can see it's orange. These things, they're not something. They're something that happen. It don't happen in my videos, because then I edit them out or make sure that happens. But it happens in my daily life, so don't worry. It happens for each one of us. But here we can see that we have this in-out argument, but we still need to map it to the variable that we created. So I press Control space. I'll say DT data. So now we mapped it. Always make sure that there's no oranges here. And we will let me close it so I can see the chat. You are still here, some of you at least. Now we are writing it again. What I will do with this, now it's actually started, Washington DC. It appears that it actually works. We have no exceptions now. We are saving it to a data table, which is only exists in the memory. So now we just need to, whenever we're done with this process, we just need to write it back to Excel. We have actually solved everything except exception handling. So this one is number 5, 6. It's almost been 2 hours and only one real problem that we have to solve. That's okay, of course. What do you think of this session? Do you get something out when you see me live build, when things are a little bit more insecure and not insecure, but when you hear the thought process and you see that we solve these errors on the fly? What do you think? Let me know in the chat, please. I could use a lot of feedback. What do you think of this? Should I have prepared better to make sure there's 0 mistakes? I doubt I can ever make a live stream then, but. So we did the lookup, and now we just need to write this data table back to Excel. Let's think about where we want to place it. We want to place it in the end state. So we take these transactions, then we process them, boom, 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 save the results to Excel, and in the end, we will write it back to our data table. We will write the data table back to Excel. Udirai says, thank you so much from India, and thank you for telling me. Please, everyone, let me know in the chat if you get something out of this, or you think I should rather have a static session, which is a bit more prepared. But the advantage of these, I can make a little bit more of these, and you'll hear my thought process. I get to engage with you, and Saksam, he's loving this session. Thank you. Now let's just solve another step, because in here we will close our applications. I will leave that to you. Again, I will not close the browser here, because then the chat breaks down and everything. But what I want to do here is that I want to write the range back to Excel. So I find a write range. This one will write the data table back to Excel. So I write range. I will the close applications, I will have that in the variant. So even though there's nothing in, but usually then we can have it up here. So the workbook path text must be quoted, but let's just copy it from, we had it here in the initialization. Let me just go back to the main. We have it here. There's no reason to reinvent anything. Maybe I could have, we will use it here. We will write this back. Hopefully it will work. One recommendation that I will recommend you is not to overwrite any existing data. We will not do that, because sometimes we want to reuse it, or then we have overwritten data. So create a separate sheet called results. It will just be the same as the first one, just with the capitals in it. The data table, that will be the DT data. That is where we save our data. Remember to add headers, and hopefully it will work now. Guru says, with mistakes, we can learn a lot better. Jiggers, please share the recording link. Sure. The link is actually this link. So when the session is done, you can rewatch it as many times as you want. The video will be there. So just go back. Now I can run my workflow, and hopefully we need to run the dispatcher. Always we have to, or not always, but we have to take our items to the queue, so we can process them one by one in the REFramework. So here is the REFramework. Let's just run it. And I should have dragged it over here, but now it's happening over here. India capital, USA capital. And hopefully we have written our data back to Excel. What happened here, what we needed to remember, the important takeaway is to always map your arguments. Otherwise we had the problem where we had an exception with the lookup. But I think you can take a lot of the key concepts with you here from the REFramework. We will still do exception handling, so stay tuned. This is a very important concept to try catch. We are at Poland capital. And France capital. Did we actually add them twice to the queue? Australia capital, that has to be the last one, right? Yeah, so that was it. Let's inspect our data, and hopefully we have saved it. Otherwise we need to debug once more. So here you can see we have the sheet 1, and then we have the results. There you go, your REFramework worked. We have processed transactions one by one. There will be a problem whenever we encounter exceptions. There will not be, but we will create an intentional exception, so our REFramework can handle that. Let me see in the chat, and let me know if something is unclear. Will you post this video in your YouTube channel? For sure, the video will be available. But the video will be available on this link, so you can just come back to this link whenever you want. But please stay, and let's talk about exceptions. Because now our REFramework worked. We have touched upon all the the important concepts. So now let's create an error, because what I did in the beginning was actually to say Hahaha Land instead of Denmark. Denmark is my country, by the way. So now this one here, and let me just make sure that if I open up a new browser, that it actually shows up in here. I'll just do Google. Then I'll say Hahaha Land, and I will drag it in here. Because what happens here is that there's no capital in Hahaha Land. So hopefully it throws an error if we have created our selector stable enough. Let me minimize this. So to make a proper exception handling, it's built in the REFramework. Remember what I told you here from the process. We have the success, the business exception, and the system exception. What we created here is not a system exception. That was when our systems were not open, but what we have here is a business exception. It's just a wrong thing in our data. That's perfectly fine. The business has not prepared the data for us, or it's actually sometimes it's just perfectly fine that they are like that. So go into a process. Again, we only use the invoke process workflow. You can also find it over here in the process and the framework, and you can open it from here. But now I opened this one here. So the problem now, that will be the get text capital. And let's think about what can go wrong now. We want to see if we can get the text, and we cannot now because there's no capital, so we want to encounter for that. We will use a try catch. But first let me move up the lookup data table here, because we will need this index to also be able to write a log back with the business rule exception in that row. So in Hahaha Land, we will write that the country doesn't exist. We will create a log. So I just moved it up to in front of the get text. Now let's surround the get text with a try catch. Again, if you just came here, we are in 2 hours in a REFramework live session. Stay tuned. We will learn a lot about try catch and error exception handling. I made a video about try catch as well. You can watch that afterward. Again, if this video helps you, if this helps you seeing me developing, please give it a comment in the chat and a thumbs up. That will help my channel. So now we have this try catch. A try catch is, if you know programming, it's just like that. We try something, and if that goes well, fine, we just continue out of the block. We don't perform any of these things there. But if an exception happens, we can catch it and define what we want to do. So I will drag this one in here. And what I want to do now is that if this goes wrong, then I want to catch it. So if I go down to catches, here, and I know that I just want to catch every exception here. I will just say system exception. That one will catch everything that goes wrong here, like that. Maybe you want to be a little bit more specific, but it's okay. So we're trying to get the capital text out, and we know this is from the Hahaha Land. It could also be other ones. And then we want to do something. So we want to assign a value to our Excel row, and then we want to break out and have a system exception written to our orchestrator. So in here, we first have an assign, like this one here. That's why we moved the looked up here. We needed the index number. So if I just copy this one here and paste it in here. So we will not be writing the strCapital because it doesn't exist. What we will write to the data table instead is, in quotation marks, country doesn't exist, like this. And then we will throw an exception. So another important topic, we can use a throw. What this does, it just throw an exception, and then our framework will catch it. It will go out to the outer one, and then it will catch it. And I will show you in a little while, because this just customize it and finish it. We are queue gets auto clear when we run performer. No, it does not. Our performer takes the queue one by one. But yeah, if our performer runs perfectly, it will take all items, and in the end, it will have cleared the queue if nothing unintended happened. But now we will use the throw, and let me just have the mouse over here. We are done after this, but make sure you stay tuned. This is very important. So here in the throw, I want to have a new BusinessRuleException, and then I can give it a message for Orchestrator. So I'll say in quotation marks, I can say something. Or we can actually have the exception message Excel, but I'll just say country doesn't exist, written to Excel. Like this, we have written an error to Excel. So now, when this happens, when this throw happens, it will break. These two steps will not be performed, but let me just make sure we saved it. And let me go to main. So it will say, oh, we have a business exception. It will just come over here and go back and get the next item. Shouldn't we see if it actually worked? I dragged it over here. And John, he says that he have another question. May I add it to Discord? Sure, go. You can always ask it in Discord, but please do it in the channel so my answer and everyone else's answer can benefit the most. We can discuss these things with each other and learn a lot. Let's try to run it and see that it actually works now, and make sure that we have the dispatcher. The Excel sheet is open. Yeah, well, it was actually right. Let us just delete the results just to make sure that we're actually writing something. Let's be sure that our robot actually performed. Now, don't debug, because then we will stop with the exception. Just make sure you run, because we have made proper exception handling, hopefully. And now the dispatcher ran. That was not a problem. But here, choose to run file in the ReFramework Live. Let me see. Hi, Anders. Hi, Sixer. Thanks for all your support. I'm so happy that all of you guys keep helping me. Now you can see that I dragged it over here. I'm very, very pleased with all you people always coming by and helping me in all sorts of ways. You guys, you're certainly a big help to making my dream come true. So it's really nice that we can help each other. What time is it at yours, Sixer? It's 4 o'clock here. I have agreement with my family in half an hour, but now an exception happens. Now it will try to get this Hahaha Land. Hopefully we solved it right. You saw that at least there was no error, but the exception. But hopefully it was just a business. We defined that it was not. It was a business rule exception, and hopefully that get logged to our Excel and Orchestrator for that matter. We can scroll a little bit up here in the output window, because it's also here you can see we throw an error, and you can actually see the exception message here as well. But let's inspect our Excel sheet, and hopefully we have here. There you go. We have now a log. We have used the try catch, we have used the throw, and we have written out the message to our Excel sheet. We could, of course, have created a more advanced log, but you can use the Orchestrator, or we could create a CSV. I have another log, a video about only logs coming up. But if I go to my folder and I go to queues, now you can see that we have 50 successful, but we can view the transaction. Here you can see that we actually failed one. So in case that you need to come back to Orchestrator and watch your items, you can see that a lot of them are successful, but one of them has failed. And that is a business rule exception. If I click these 3 dots, I click view details, you can see that the message came here. I could choose another message if we can even be more specific, and that's it. And thank you, Sixer. It's very, very nice that you are so kind. So that was it for the ReFramework session. We had 2 hours. That was perfectly fine. We covered every important topic that you want to touch whenever you are creating your ReFramework. A lot of the advanced settings, let me show you, in which we don't, which we didn't cover. But and that is mainly in all of the initialization, the transaction we rarely touch, but a lot of the advanced settings. But let me show you one thing before we leave. That is my Discord, because a lot of you don't know what a Discord is. But a Discord is just a forum where we discuss things. I have a diary. I actually write the status of my new open company. As you know, I went full time on create content, and this one is my diary in here, but it also has help channels. You can have help in Appian, but also UiPath. And it's actually, these ones are some of the best developers. So in case you don't have access to this Discord, this is what you want to have access to. You will learn so much from these guys and me sometimes. But and the link is in the description below here in the video. What you want to do when you join the Discord is to go to the rules and accept those. You can also just give it a reaction here. And then set your role. You can get access to these help channels, but you only get access to them by reacting to these icons. So if you want access to the UiPath, you can react to this. You get access to that. Please come, and then just if you're actually delivering something, you don't have to know anything, but if you're just socializing, people are more than willing to help you. That's it. Thanks a lot for today. I don't think that we have any more questions today. I'm really, really happy that you came along. Have a good day. Bye-bye.